healthy relationship with somebody else, it starts with a healthy relationship with yourself. And like the work on yourself never ends.
So what are those fundamental characteristics then of a good relationship? I've heard you write about a few of them, things like respect, and what are those things that you've come to learn now that you wish you knew then?
I think every healthy relationship with somebody else, it starts with a healthy relationship with yourself, right? So if you don't respect yourself and if you don't value your own thoughts and well-being and health, you're never going to be able to set the boundaries. You're just going to tolerate poor treatment from others because you're going to think it's justified. People tend to have it backwards. They think like, if I can just find a great relationship, then I'll feel great about myself. But it's a recipe for disaster. Like you got to get straight with yourself. And then once you're straight with yourself, that enables you to have that healthy relationship to be able to share it with somebody else. So that's paramount, totally key. Like you got to get your own shit straight. You got to like whatever baggage you got rummaging around up there, whatever trauma you've got in your background, you got to start working on it. And then you need to be able to approach the relationship with a certain amount of vulnerability. Like again, most of us by default, when we find that somebody that we're crazy about or who's crazy about us, our natural inclination is to start hiding all the ugly stuff. It's like, no, you have to come to the relationship completely open, saying like, hey, here's my list of issues because we all got them. I'm working on them because you're working on yourself. Hopefully we can work on them together, because obviously they're going to have their issues too. And so just that open dialogue is kind of necessary to even get things started. That's really where the trust and respect comes from, because like you can't, like if you're not sharing every aspect of yourself, then you're never going to trust the other person. Like if you're always kind of hiding something, you're never going to believe that they're actually loving you. They're believing the thing you're portraying to them. And so you're never going to trust it. You're like, oh, well, yeah, they're into me now, but it's because they don't know about this thing over here. But if you just come 100% with everything on the table, that's where the trust is you're able to start building the trust and actually, start from a healthy place.
So what you said at the start, the first point, I mean, both points were perfect, but the first point really, it made me think about a million people I know that are in the mindset that if they can find a relationship, it will help fix their problems, but they are fundamentally like not ready for a relationship. So they go through this like vicious negative reinforcing cycle of like, they weren't ready for a relationship. They got into one, tolerated toxic treatment, smashed their self-esteem even more, which meant that they were even less ready for a relationship, but meant that they wanted one more because they wanted to fill the crack in their self-esteem with a person. And you see them on this sort of like repeated rejection cycle of these toxic relationships. And it's like going downwards because it's smashing their self-esteem more and more each time, which is making them want a relationship more and more, but making them less capable of having one. And I watch it play out on social media. I'm like, Jenny, stop. I'm like, oh, she's got another boyfriend. 6 months later, I'm like, oh no. It's no. But because social media, what it's doing is Jenny's waking up in the morning and she's seeing the card, like Kylie Jenner looks happy on that yacht with her boyfriend and this. So these happy people in front of me are happy because of their perfect relationships. And it's that awful spiral. So to say to someone, work on yourself. It's like, well, no.
It's the equivalent of like telling people who want to get a six pack to like eat vegetables. It's correct, but it's the last thing anybody wants. It's like, no. Give me the secret 5-day workout routine that's gonna, it's like, no, there isn't one. It's interesting because these things they work. They work in an upward cycle and a downward cycle, and you just described like the downward spiral. But it also works the other way around too, because once you're working on yourself, and like the work on yourself never ends. Once you are working on yourself and you find somebody who's working on themselves and you're able to communicate about it, then you make each other better, which makes you feel even more confident, more proud of yourself, more solid in who you are, which then just enables you to work on yourself even more. And so it creates an upward spiral as well. Like one way, I told a friend a couple years ago, because he was kind of having trouble. He was like, our emotions blind us. Getting in that new relationship, like falling for that person, like it feels so good. And generally the way the brain works is like, like when something feels good, we convince ourselves that it is good. And when something feels bad, we convince ourselves that it is bad. And so he was like, yeah, it feels so good that like, I really think like that, yeah, we are being honest and open and we are working on ourselves. And I think it's healthy. And then 6 months go by and I realized that it's completely toxic and a disaster. And so I told him, I said, the best way I can describe it is when you're in an unhealthy relationship or a relationship that's not quite working right, like you're not completely being open or on the same page, it feels like pushing a boulder up a hill. Like you're always pushing hard, you feel like you need to always be pushing to like kind of keep things stable and in place. Whereas a healthy relationship, it feels like pushing a rock down a hill. It's like you just give a little bit of a tug and it just goes.
Flows, yeah.
Like you don't, at some point, it doesn't even feel like you're putting effort into it anymore. I mean, you are working on it, but it's like every amount of effort that you put in is immediately being matched by the other person. And so it's like you no longer feel like you're just fighting constantly to like keep things stable.
And your pickup artistry phase where you learned these lessons, eventually you came out the other end, as we all did.
Yeah.
My girlfriend's listening now. We all have come out.
We're all well out of that phase. Let it be known.